It was back in 2007 that the first iPhone was launched and introduced to the world. However, that was at the time of this recording 13 years ago. Unfortunately, I do not have the first iPhone. I don't even have any of them. However, you don't have to be rich to do reviews. As a consequence, today I will be reviewing the iPhone 4. So this product was launched specifically in June 2010. It might look small, but this is actually 137 grams. It's about the same weight as an iPhone 7, and that is considerably bigger. So it does have a bit of weight to it. However, that does not mean it's cheap. This might be made of cardboard and paper. However, the back of this phone is made of glass. It does not support wireless charging because that wasn't a thing back in the day. But back glass, the side would be stainless steel, and display is made of glass. So here we can see the iPhone 4 in all its glory. We have a home button without Touch ID, just one physical home button. Here we have our camera, which we will get into a bit more depth later on, and we have our earpiece, good for calling. On the bottom, we will have our microphone. On the left, our iPod connector for charging and syncing, if I'm not mistaken, at the center, and our headphone jack when that was still a thing. At the top, we will have our mute switch, our volume rockers at the side, so that's good. Very awkwardly placed power button, but when you think of it ergonomically, it's okay. I would still prefer it on the side. Bottom, we have our oversized iPhone logo, iPhone font. Apologies for that. We have our Apple logo. We have our flash. We have our camera. Move on to some technical specs. 2010. 3.5 inches was considered okay. That's what we have here, an IPS LCD display. It's 3.5 inches, hence this super small form factor. It was good for 54% screen to body ratio. You can see the entire forehead, chin, and even the side bezels. This display in itself is 640 by 960 pixels with a 3:2 aspect ratio, so you're not your typical 20:9 aspect ratios that we have today. 330 pixels per inch. Now I'd like to put this into perspective because here in 2020, this exists. We shall be reviewing this later. The iPhone 11. Now this here has a pixel density of 326. So fun fact, even though this technically does have a superior display, this has a higher pixel density than the iPhone 11. This phone ran iOS 4. I do not really remember properly up to which iOS this stopped, so I'm not going to say it just in case I get it wrong, but this ran iOS 4 when it was released. It had a 45 nanometer A4 chip, so that just shows you how far we've come in the past 10 years. The upcoming iPhone 12 is now rumored to come with a 5 nanometer processor. This was 45 nanometers. Again, back in the day, it got the work done, did the job. It was a single core processor. This, again, in typical Apple fashion, nothing has changed. This does not have a micro SD card slot. What it did have, however, was internal memory. It came with 8 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, or 32 gigabytes of ROM, which is like unbelievable considering nowadays 64 is the base. This had less than a gigabyte of RAM with approximately 512 megabytes of RAM. Now in the modern era, we use our smartphones as our cameras. It does everything, not just photography, but generally one of the biggest uses and one of the biggest reasons for people upgrading is the camera. Personally, I don't use the camera much myself, which is kind of ironic because I'm using it right now. The rear camera was a 5 megapixel f2.8 aperture. So that immediately tells you 5 megapixels. Again, megapixels aren't everything. Our macro lenses or our depth sensors can get to 5 megapixels, not the rear camera. We're pushing 108 megapixels. And here this is pushing 5. This was good for 720p recording at 30 FPS. So not the best camera in the world. I would not recommend using this for video recording. The front camera is where this thing definitely starts to show its age. This is 0.3 megapixel camera. I'm not too sure what the aperture count is, and it's good for 480p at 30 FPS. So how big was the flagship 10-year-old iPhone's battery capacity? It was 1,420 milliamp hours. Combine this with a 45nm processor, and I would not expect more than 3 hours. However, compare this very quickly to the 2019 iPod Touch. That has a 1,043 milliamp hour battery, and this has a 1,420 milliamp hour battery. Quick note, this phone came in two colors, black and white. So my closing thoughts on this phone. I don't see any uses besides getting a brand new sealed one and keeping that for another 50 years and selling it off on eBay. But I don't see any practical use of keeping this or using this even as a phone. There's nothing special about it, right? I mean, yeah, there's something that this has. We have a headphone jack. You can still hear audio, but you have, what, 8 to 32 gigabytes of ROM. It doesn't have a good camera, the display is not as great, but hey, it's 10 years old, what can you expect? Well, I guess that's it. Again, I do apologize. This was my first review actually my first review in general, so I'm not the best at it. But hey, we've got through one video. Let's hope we can do the rest. Thank you for watching. Hit the dislike button if you didn't like it. You don't need to subscribe to my channel, I don't mind. But I'll see you in the next one.